Hello, Space Junkies, and welcome to episode number 77 of What a Piece of Junk, the Star Wars podcast here on the Fandom Podcast Network. I'm your agreeable host, Scott Botman, and I have decided to change all of my screen names to Rat Catcher Droid after this week's episode of The Book of Boba Fett. I'm just kidding. I'm going to stick with my usual screen names, and I'm going to stick with one of my usual co pilots, Mr. Derek Marsh, who is coming back on the show after a short hiatus. Derek, how is it going?
It's going great. I've shoveled myself out of Hoth 2.0 here in Kentucky.
Yes.
And it's still plaguing the Midwest there. And I actually have to go up to Cleveland this week. So hopefully it'll give me enough break where when I take my drive up tomorrow and my drive back Thursday, it's not so bad. But just doing okay. Surviving the cold. At least it's been sunshine, so it hasn't felt too bad. But I'm excited to talk some Star Wars with you, Scott.
Heck yeah, we missed you last week, but things have to get taken care of. Darn real life getting in the way of Star Wars. I mean, what is this? Some kind of attack on the Wookiee home planet? Oh, I better not mention Wookiee home planet in front of our next co-host, Mr. Nathan Miracle, the Gooey Chewy himself.
Wait, there's an attack on the Wookiee home planet of Kashyyyk? We better call Yoda. He has good relations with us.
He does indeed. This week, Nathan and I thought a lot about you while watching the Book of Boba Fett because we got to see a Wookiee do that thing that they're famous for doing when you anger them. But we'll talk more about that later when we talk about our 5-star reviews. Anyway, Nathan, how's it going for you? We've had a little bit of ice and snow here in the Queen City in Charlotte, North Carolina, but not nearly as much as what Derek had to deal with at Hoth 2.0.
Yeah, we did have a couple of snowstorms, which is really weird for us. I read a statistic that we had one of the top 5 gaps in terms of numbers of days between snowfalls in the city of Charlotte. And then we had less than a week until the next snowfall. Really crazy for us around here. But it all melted, at least off of the roads fairly quickly. So it didn't hinder me too much this past week. Gave me a good excuse to watch the Book of Boba Fett.
Boom. Well, let's get right down to it. We're going to talk Book of Boba Fett, Chapter 4, The Gathering Storm. Could there be any more of an obvious foreshadowing title, Derek?
Other than maybe it's talk about some muscle or something like that, right?
Yeah, right. Because we had Black Krrsantan doing his thing, and then we had a lot of hand-to-hand fighting and so on and so forth. Yeah, all around a pretty great episode. So I really enjoyed it. I actually liked it a lot better than Chapter 3. I think it has been received online a little bit better than Chapter 3 was. So let's jump into the 5 questions here. Nathan, what was your favorite part of the episode?
Well, you've alluded it. You talked about it already today. We finally get to see a Wookiee versus Trandocin fight. That's something that I've always looked forward to seeing. We've always heard that they don't get along, and we've seen some of that in the Clone Wars. But this time we get to see a live action fight between a Wookiee and a Trandocin. And not only that, we get to see the Wookiee pull a Trandocin's arm out of his socket.
Yeah, gruesome.
I feel like he could have pulled both out and just kind of compromised. But yeah, okay.
No. See, when Jennifer Beals comes and tries to talk you down, you do get talked down a little bit. So he was half as angry as he was.
Exactly. He could have done both, but he's like, you know what? As a compromise, I will pay half my bill and only tear out one arm.
It's worth a shot.
It was
worth a shot. There was a deleted scene or a scene that was never finished for The Force Awakens where Chewbacca pulls out Unkar Plutt's arms. And that one, I've seen the CGI for it, and it doesn't look good because, well, it's not finished.
Right.
So it doesn't look anywhere close to finished either. This one looked a whole lot better. Not quite sure how they did it. Don't really care. Looked awesome.
Hey, in my opinion, this could have been practical effects, honestly. So
very well could have, yeah.
All right. Well, Derek, what was your favorite part of the episode?
I would definitely say that was a great scene. But really, I would probably say was actually the backstory on this one. This one actually was a good backstory because it actually filled a hole that we didn't know, right? Like, how did Boba Fett save Fennec Shand, right? And why is she and him
Mhm.
still, what was their relationship, right? So we obviously find out that Boba Fett was aware of Fennec because he knew her when he questioned her. And then when she didn't know who he was, because most people didn't know what Boba Fett's real face looked like, right? So when she told him, or when he told her who he was, she says, "Well, he's dead." And so, but I like that. There was a couple of parts of the backstory that were a little, gimmicky or whatever that some fans don't like. I mean, that was fine for me. I mean, we got a couple of fun cameo characters, right, from the
Mhm.
droids and stuff. But then obviously we got to see him seek revenge from the speeder bike gang, which that part was a little, I don't know, not fulfilling to me because that was just quick and out of the way. I thought there was going to be a little bit more involved with that,
So
which
I think there will be because
which yes could be.
Yeah, Fennec hinted around to him when she said,
Yeah,
"Speeder, but Swoop Gang versus Tusken." That doesn't make any sense. Like,
yeah.
I always think or have always thought that somebody else was involved in killing that tribe,
Yeah.
and they
There's a
blamed it on the.
Yeah, there's a reason we haven't had Swoop Gang member versus Tusken as one of our SmackDowns.
So, but yeah, I mean, there is definitely that alluded. So, plus there's a couple of questions that I have that I've talked to some people, and we'll kind of wrap that up at the end of this segment here of some things that we think that's coming up still that are unanswered, or maybe some plot holes, right, that some fans are asking for. But overall, though, like I said, this backstory was good. We obviously got to see the Sarlacc pit, right, and him go back, and that was kind of a cool scene. I was a little disappointed that they ended up showing the CGI version of the Sarlacc, that Favreau and Filoni didn't try to keep it nonchalant. Like, we're not going to say yes or no to either special edition version because we're not going to show it, but they
No
ended up committing to it. So,
beak.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, it was the Feed Me Seymour scene. But outside of
Yes.
that, though, like I said, this backstory actually felt fulfilling to me because it actually answered some good questions that we had gotten to this point not answered.
Cool. Cool.
And Scott,
Uh,
what about you?
yeah, for me, I mean, I know some people think it was just comic relief, but I love the entire kitchen fight scene in the flashback. Oh my gosh, from the fact that the EV-99, help me out, Nathan, is that his name? The torture
Yes,
droid. Yeah,
EV-99. Yeah.
he has become sous chef.
Yes.
And then the other droid that had all the knives doing his best General Grievous impersonation when
Yes.
he's flipping out all the blades as Boba
My
Fett's getting ready to fight him.
my friend quoted me. He's because he was sending me. He says, "I've been trained by Chef Dooku."
That's so great. And then, of
Now,
course, as I sort of mentioned at the beginning, I loved the Ratcatcher droid. I loved his design, his function, the fact that they have a droid to do it instead of a house cat. And I loved that when Boba Fett was about to just rip him in two, he turned himself off. It's like,
Yes.
nope, I'm out. Peace out.
Well, and then he uses him later when we get to see him when they're doing the family dinner,
Uh-huh.
with the other
Yep.
things. So he still kept him.
Yeah, he just reprogrammed him or, became his new master. But I just love the whole, don't kill me, I'm turning myself off. Click.
yeah.
so EV-99, we actually end up seeing in The Mandalorian as the bartender at the Mos Eisley Cantina. So I'm not clear if this was actually EV-99 or just the same model droid. It could be EV-99, and after this confrontation, Bib's like, don't need this droid anymore.
Or maybe the bartender was a different one of the same model.
I think it was confirmed that one was EV-99. I might have to go
Maybe
back
you're
and
right.
check on that.
Maybe Bib does fire him after Boba Fett steals Slave One. Yeah.
Probably.
It was really good to see Boba
Chef
Fett.
at this point.
It was really good to see Boba Fett get the ship back. So that was good.
Yeah, and Fennec
Okay.
is not only a good sharpshooter, but she's good in hand-to-hand combat too. So
Oh yeah. I mean, how could you hire Ming Na Wen and not have her, get to do some martial arts? I mean, that'd be a huge waste. It's Chun Li for crying out loud.
it is.
All right. Well, a question, a numero dos. Derek, we'll start with you this time. What did you like least about this episode?
Well, actually, you guys were talking a little bit about it because this is the thing that keeps taking me out of this show. And I honestly think the Trandoshan CGI was bad.
Mm.
I didn't care for it. I think it was too again, if you're trying to compare it to the Bosk version, it just doesn't look as, true to like real life. To me, it just looked too phony. Obviously we had the battle scene, and then I mean, there's supposed to be people in prosthetics, but I don't think it was good makeup and good puppeteering or costume making on their behalf. And I get that maybe they're different. We've talked about this before. Maybe they're different. Um,
Like subspecies.
Subspecies of the Trandoshans, like Sid is, right? Because they're shorter, right? They're not
Right.
tall,
Right.
and lengthy as like Bosk is in that traditional way. So it's hard to say, or maybe again because they were gambling, right? Maybe they're older, maybe they're retired, right? Maybe as they get older, they shrink.
I was 2 weeks from retirement.
So,
or maybe Bosk is just the Shaquille O'Neal of.
and maybe
Trandoshan's.
maybe that's what made him such a great hunter, right? And we'll talk
Yeah,
about him later, right?
He's like a
So,
physical specimen,
yeah, he's the LeBron James of everyone, right? So,
yeah,
yeah, just overall that it's just that's taking me out of it. But that's really the only thing out of the entire episode here. Just like in episode 3, like I said, with the speeder bikes, it's just the CGI in some of those sequence shots that just doesn't feel. It just feels off for whatever reason. Which to some of your guys' points, like if it's done in the volume, because obviously they're trying to do a lot of stuff that way now, because it saves on traveling costs and whatnot. But it just, I don't know, it's just something didn't feel right in that portion. Even with the family dinner later, the other two, I don't know, what is Pondo Pob's race, the walrus. Yeah, them, and then whatever the other, I don't know what the other, the one that talked the most.
Clatunian?
Clatunian?
Yeah, he's a Clatunian. Yep.
Okay,
The
Clatunian.
one voiced by Phil Lamar.
Yeah. So those ones obviously, were true prosthetics, costumes and stuff. I still couldn't tell if the Trandoshans were, if they were CGI. But either way, it didn't look right to me. I don't know. So
Yeah, and
No, I could totally see that.
yeah, to be fair, the part that I like about the Wookiee Trandoshan fight is the fact that we get to see a Wookiee tear Trandoshan's arm out of its socket, not necessarily the CGI. So I can see where you're coming from on that.
Yeah, I think for me, it's the thing that I disliked the most was I can easily fix this in my mind, in my own quote unquote headcanon, but I would like to have seen at least one throwaway mention of Boba Fett talking about how he has some amnesia or memory loss from all the trauma that he suffered at the hands of the Sarlacc and the Tuskens, to explain the fact that we had that whole scene where he went back to the Sarlacc to look for his armor. Why didn't he remember that he had it on when he escaped, and then the Jawas took it and the Tuskens like punched him in the face? Like,
So this is, and I was debating with somebody online about this comment, as you do online, right?
sure,
And,
yep,
and the thing you have to remember is, right, we're seeing this in third person, right? So we're not seeing it through the eyes of Bo. But to your point, I mean, that could probably explain that a little bit better. But you have to think about it, especially in the opening scenes when you're trapped in a Sarlacc pit and you're claustrophobic, right? He's just tearing himself out. He's probably, the way he hit his head on Jabba's sail barge and then rolled into it, right? Getting eaten alive theoretically, right? And just everything going on, and him basically having to crawl with his last breath out of the sand too. On top of that, he's probably not all with it anyways to begin with, other than just trying to, because I mean, imagine, when you see those movies. I don't know if you guys watch some of those horror movies or whatnot, where people are buried alive, right? Some of the way they've done those. And it's like, you're just in the dark, right? And you're just surrounded by a small inch box, right? So you're just panicking and doing all that stuff. And then heat exhaustion, right? Because Boba's sitting there out there in the middle of the day when he passes out.
In the desert. Yeah.
So, and then when the Jawas come, I mean, for all we know, and again, they don't show it this way, but for all we know, it could just be blobs of stuff that Boba Fett sees when he wakes up, right? And he grabs the Jawa's leg and it hits him, right? We don't know what he sees, right? And that's the thing you have to remember when you think about that. I mean, yeah, it's fantasy, it's sci-fi, I get it, but in real life, that kind of stuff I mean, you just have to think about what that person's going through anyways, and it's all so quick and everything that's where I feel like he feels like it was somehow left there because that's all he can remember prior to him basically waking up and being naked, right, by the Tuscans.
Yeah, and I totally get that. I guess the thing that made me put this as my least favorite part is we could have had him tell Fennec Shand real quick, I've very few memories for how I escaped, but I'm pretty sure that my armor is still in the belly of the beast. Something like that. And it
Yeah.
would have helped me to come to grips. But as is, just like you said, excellent reasoning, beautiful logic, Derek, and it makes total sense. But I had to come up with it myself, or in this case, you had to tell me instead of the show helping me out.
I agree with
so.
that. I agree with that. They can
Yeah,
help the audience a bit better.
The show could have made it clear, even if it's easy enough to put together. Should have said something along those lines. So,
Yeah.
My least favorite part of this episode comes from a similar time frame as yours, but it's actually Slave One hovering over the Sarlacc pit. The scene where we see from the Sarlacc pit point of view, looking straight up into the sky, and Slave One hovers into view. We've never seen Slave One hover face down before, so that threw me a little bit.
Yeah,
And also,
that was weird.
it didn't seem to quite make sense to me because the pit is angled in. It's like an antlion pit, which I'm pretty sure that's what it was originally based off of in the first place. So to get Slave One to actually be right on top of the hole, Slave One had to be angled in a very odd way. Like,
Yeah.
all of this
It had
seems
to have the bubble had to go into the suction cuppy section of the
Yeah.
Sarlacc.
yeah, like all of this seemed way too complicated to me. I'm like, why didn't you just land and
Well, and just that, like, how is it propelled off the ground that way? Because
Right.
Well,
it
yeah.
propels
yeah.
into it, right? Like if the wings would have turned so that you would have had them then hovering that way, that would have made a little bit more sense. But at this point, you're literally, facing the Sarlacc pit, and then you should be pushed into it because you've thrusted that way.
Yeah, and there's always a little bit of suspension of disbelief in terms of anti-gravity technology in the Star Wars universe, but this one didn't seem internally consistent to me.
Especially when
it's-
you're like 5 feet off the ground too. It's not like
Yeah.
I don't have a
space,
problem
right?
with Slave One being able to function like a repulsor, like a land speeder or a speeder bike. That's fine because all the starships have to have that because otherwise, how would they ever take off? X-wings have repulsion. And the Millennium Falcon obviously does, when it does this thing.
Well, that's it, right, Scott?
yeah.
But it lands on its back, right? That's how it lands.
Right.
That's the point Nathan's talking, because that's the only thing but it's facing outward, so it should be propelling it into the sand. So how is it just floating above it? That's his main question.
If you took Luke's X-34 land speeder and turned it upside down, I would expect it to no longer function properly.
Well, no, that's not how repulsor technology works in Star Wars. If Luke wanted to fly it upside down, he'd have to A, strap himself in, and B, reverse the polarity on the repulsor field so that it now pushes out of the top of the vehicle.
Right. So Slave One has the repulsors on the side that it normally lands on, but when it was hovering over the Sarlacc pit, it was inverse of that.
Yeah, but it's
Normally
it's
the cockpit faces up, and now it's facing down.
Yeah, but it's a little bit like Star Trek. If Picard wants the shuttlecraft to, go the other way, he just reverses the energy field. So, I mean, that's what Bubba was doing when he was making all those control changes. He was changing the repulsor field so that the thing was, flying upside down. Slave One, the Firespace class gunship, is designed to do lots of multi-vector attack modes. That's why the cockpit is all swivelly.
Yeah, but it's just what's repulsing it off the ground, though, is what Nathan.
It's an energy field. It doesn't need a funnel. It doesn't need an exhaust. The part that has the exhaust is for forward momentum.
I guess maybe that's how it goes, and it could go any direction. But to me, that again, space logic, sci-fi,
Here I am doing the thing
Physics.
that I said the show shouldn't make me do. In this case, I'm making up all these excuses why the engine works because for whatever reason, I am more comfortable with saying that the ship's engineering is all this stuff, whereas Boba Fett's brain engineering, which in his case is actually a thing because he's a clone, shouldn't work the way that the writers wanted it to. And I'm like, no, that can't happen. This isn't how the biological process. Yeah. Anyway.
Well,
What's
to your
that?
point, in space, I could get that too, though. But when you're literally 5 feet off the ground, that's what makes it. To me, the gravity should be pulling it. Like the pulsar force field or whatever your makeup shouldn't be strong enough without it actually being enough of it, like an engine burst, to be pushing him off the surface, right?
Or something on the ship should have turned and given us an indication of, okay, now this is acting as
A propulsion.
the repulsor. Yeah.
Or the classic, he looks over at Fennec Shand and says, brace yourself, I'm going to reverse the polarity on the repulsor field. Beep! And then there's like a little warmth, and you just for a second, there's the little energy field.
That makes sense to me too.
Yeah. The whole rest of that scene, though, was cool. Like when she fell out of her chair so she could push the Sonic.
Yeah, I mean, that made sense.
That was awesome.
Yeah. I mean, that kind of felt like an undersea, one of our undersea horror movies, right? Where it's like they're the globe, and like the Sarlacc censored her, right? Because that's why that came up and tried to stab her, but it hit the glass, so it couldn't get her.
I almost wanted after the thing, like.
What was that, Nathan?
There's always a bigger Sarlacc.
Yes.
I wanted we're gonna need a bigger ship joke, like Jaws,
That would have been funny.
See, but we needed a smaller ship. The whole problem was it was too big to get down in the hole.
Well, and my main question is, why did they blow it up first to begin with?
Well, they didn't want to
go
destroy
down
the armor. That would be my explanation. Is if they drop the sonic charge in, that's going to destroy the armor.
But Boba Fett
he still did it anyways.
He finished telling Fennec Shand, don't worry, the Beskar is going to be fine. You'd think he would just be all like, I'm going to blow the crap out of it and the Beskar will be fine, because it happened to Mando when his ship got destroyed.
He probably also thought it was already dead, what with having punched a hole in its stomach.
And set it on fire.
Yeah.
Apparently.
I thought it was dead. So I was surprised when it snapped up at him.
Yeah,
but it still doesn't answer the question. Is that the same Sarlacc pit that the Great Dragon went into?
It probably is, because now it's dead.
Yeah, it is.
That's
definitely
what I'm saying.
Now.
So I'm wondering where that connection, like how big that Sarlacc is, because it's there underground, and then like how it goes to whatever tunnel, right, where the crate then has its home, right? And and is that the front end or the back end of the Sarlacc? I mean, I know they have books on this and all this tells us, but really, like, where does it back end come out, right?
I almost think that the Sarlacc's a connection of different pits, so it doesn't have just one feeding area.
Correct.
Maybe a bantha falls in this hole one day and that hole another day, but it's all connected underneath. I've got bamboo in the backyard. It works that way too. There's roots all over the place, and it's all connected.
And we got more of an actual bantha in this one too, right?
Yeah, Boba's bantha.
So it's like actually like showing us how you built the relationship with the bantha. So, but we don't see the bantha anymore. So I'm a little upset what happened to the bantha. Hopefully, I mean, obviously it lived because he got a ship, so I know he doesn't need the bantha anymore. But did he set it free? Did he?
Yeah, he said go make baby banthas.
Oh, did he? Okay, I didn't catch that.
Yeah, he had a whole speech of go find some girl bantha and have a bantha.
I must have missed that then.
I like this idea though. Boba's all, if you love something, set it free.
Which like half the Star Wars fandom hates, because this is like soft-hearted Boba, and we're like, we need badass Boba.
Yeah, it'll be okay. It'll be okay, people. All right, moving on. Question numero trace. We kind of hit on a few of these already, but Nathan, what connections did you see to the rest of the Star Wars galaxy?
Well, obviously the big one is don't upset a Wookiee. They will pull your arms out of your socket. So that's a huge connection for me. It was interesting to see the connection between Boba Fett's Rancor and Jabba's Rancor. They're keeping it in the same pit, but Boba's definitely using that Rancor differently than Jabba did. It's more of an active, oh yeah, by the way, I've got a Rancor. Whereas Jabba surprised people and it's like, oh yep, you're going in the pit. You don't know why, but good luck. Those are probably the biggest ones that I saw. Outside of that, we got a lot of stuff that we've already had. Black Chrysanthemum from the comics, but we'd seen him in previous episodes, that sort of thing. Derek, did you see any other maybe more hidden connections there?
Well, I mean, obviously, as I mentioned, we kind of got the whole backstory with Fennec Shand, like how that completed to me because obviously that was all more Mandalorian, right? So we're seeing that connection close up of how, and that's kind of where it throws you off a little bit, right? Because you've got the flashbacks, which are happening before Mando season 2, at least at this point, and then we get Mando meeting up with Boba and Fennec, and then we're getting Crime Lord Boba now, right? That's what we're assuming we're getting based off this timeline. So, I think it's kind of painting that picture a little bit better. I would definitely. It's building the world of Mos Espa a lot more, right? Because we've seen now with the body shop modifiers, right? The mod people. We got obviously the cameo from Thundercat playing as Scott said, the tattoo artist, right? So we got to see
I kept
that.
wanting to say he's the tattoo guy, but he's the
So-
modification guy.
And apparently they were playing one of his songs as the background music on that
That's
scene,
awesome.
which was kind of cool because it was expanding the universe a little bit more with the way the music is. Like it didn't feel so Star Warsy, right? So you're feeling like a little bit more modern, current modern era to our timeline, feeling like it's going into Star Wars, right? So, which is kind of cool. So I think that's like a bigger universe kind of broadening if you think of it that way. And then really, I think it's kind of doing the whole. As we talked about Boba, it's better when you've got a big crew, right? So we're talking about that. So you kind of see where he's getting all of his crew members from, right? With this, we've got Fennec, we've got Black Chrysanthemum. He's obviously got everything in Jabba's palace now. He's got the Rancor. He's got Danny Trejo. So he's building his crew right now, right? So it's kind of cool. But I just think that's always kind of been the Star Wars thing, right? I mean, even your solo characters, it seems like Darth Vader. If you go in the I shouldn't say expanded universe. If you go into the comic books, he's got his Inquisitors, right? He's got his band of people, his crew, right? So I think that's kind of how Star Wars has always kind of felt. Even if it's just a 2-man crew like Han Solo and Chewbacca, you got your crew, right? So, but we even know back then with Solo, I mean, Han Solo wasn't by himself in some aspects because as a kid, he had Kira and his crew there in the underworld of Corellia, and then with Tobias Beckett and his crew, right? So again, it's just expanding that kind of Star Wars family montage, whether it's blood related family or just, family put together because of, fighting for whatever together reason.
Yeah, and in The Force Awakens, Han does mention that they used to have a bigger crew.
Yes.
No
yes.
word on what happened to them, but they were helpful in ours on board.
No word on which Rathchar ate them. For me, the biggest connection that we saw was Wookiees hate Trandoshans. Trandoshans don't like Wookiees. I liked that being brought up as a rivalry because I got to explain to Mita because she was like, wow, that was brutal, but why did he hate those Trandoshan guys? And I'm like, well, Trandoshans hate Wookiees, Wookiees hate Trandoshans, much the way that Klingons hate Romulans and Romulans hate Klingons. And she was like, oh, okay. So, keeping it all.
I got to explain that to Andrea as well.
Yes!
but I didn't jump
Same
over
analogy?
No, not same analogy. No, I went back to the Clone Wars cartoon with the episode that had Chewbacca in it where the Trandoshans basically played the most dangerous game with the Padawans and the Wookiees.
I think Trandoshans are like Predator because they're all about the trophies, the points, right? That's how they are. So
they're like,
and of course, yes, Nathan.
They're like Hirogen.
Yes, they're like
Hirogen.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I was going to say in Star Wars: The Old Republic MMO, your Trandoshan buddy is all about the great scorekeeper and the great hunt and all that stuff. So that's pretty cool. Okay, so let's get into some episode-specific questions. Derek, we didn't do these last episode out of respect for you. So,
okay.
No, I'm just kidding. We forgot.
Well, Derek, I know you guys had Leon, and I'm sure he had some better, interesting takes on the series than what questions we would have came up with.
He had a lot of fight analysis there.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm sure he
Okay, Derek.
somehow
So
linked it back to his Norwegian Celtic heritage or something.
Oh well, of course.
yes.
We
All right,
love you,
Derek.
Lee.
You have a custom question for us. Go ahead and hit it.
Yeah. So my question is, towards the end, because again, we got a big bunch of flashbacks. But do you guys think, even though they all said that they wouldn't, and they were all good with the deal, do you think one of the crime lord families will eventually betray Boba anyways?
1? No. 3? Probably.
Well, one of the three, or you think all three will
And
do it?
and also the other 2. Yes, I think they will all betray him in a heartbeat because they are the worst hive of scum and villainy imaginable outside of
Yeah,
Mos Eisley.
yeah. I got to be honest. I agree with Nathan. I think that I don't think that all three will betray him, though. I think that the Clatunian guy specifically is going to betray him. The one who was the most reticent to agree. And meanwhile, the Aquilish and the Trandocians are just going to be like, hey, as long as we're not losing money, we don't want to get involved in this gang war because that will make us lose money.
Yeah, I think the argument for the Trandocians betraying is Boba did have that line earlier in the season about how even when a Trandoshan pays you a compliment, it sounds like a threat.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, they just don't like Black Chrysanthemum. But then again, the fact that they are afraid of Black Chrysanthemum may keep them in line.
That's right. Yep, Chrysanthemum is going to be the ace in the hole. Or, as Jennifer Beal called him, Santo. I
Now,
loved that
So
nickname.
now
for
we
him.
got the nickname, right? Because
Yes.
we were trying to think of his nickname, so Santo is his nickname.
Yep. Plus,
now-
it makes me think of the old Mexican luchador who wore the silver or the white mask, Santos. I'm like, come on, this is great. Star Wars and professional wrestling, my two favorite things. Anyway,
now, the argument for the Clatunians betraying him is you don't hire Phil Lamar for that short of a role. There's no way that he's going to just appear in this episode. He's definitely coming back.
yeah, totally. Cool. All right,
you think?
Nathan, you've got a. Derek, what do you think? It's your question. What do you think will happen with the betrayal?
I think I'm pretty much lined up with you, Scott. I don't think the other two will do anything, but I definitely think that he will at some point. And Boba's gonna have to kill him. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and then
I
take
think
over his
that'll-
territory and make more prosperity. So,
Yep,
but then at the same
consolidate.
point, I could see it to Nathan's point where he has to fight all three of them too, and then he just, he doesn't have to fight any families anymore because he owns all their stuff because he's killed
Yeah,
them
now
all.
they're all dead, so he's just like business as usual, baby.
So, yep.
All right, Nathan, you've got a custom question for us, and that'll be our fifth and final question for this chapter.
Yes, so at the end of the episode, Boba says that what he lacks is muscle. Fennec tells him that you can hire muscle if you know where to look. Now, it seems rather obvious that Mando is an option, especially with hearing his theme in this week's episode.
Mhm.
But outside of Mando, who do you think Boba might get to be that muscle?
Derek, what do you think?
I'm hoping we get Simon Pegg as Dengar.
Oh, that's a
Oh.
cool idea. Yeah. I
Yeah,
hadn't even considered that possibility.
Yeah, I think we get our cameos from some of our traditional bounty hunters. So I think he has to call in some favors, and I think that's what we're going to see. So
Do you think we'll see IG-88? Because, I mean, we know they have the nice, assets and props for IG type droids.
yeah, I mean, there's very good. Well, I mean, because at this point we know at least in Aftermath, Dengar would be alive.
Right?
So we know he'd be alive at this time. Orsing is officially dead. Have we gotten? Is that canon?
In the solo film, they mention her death.
Okay, that's what I thought. Yeah, because
Pretty
Lando,
sure
right?
it's
Lando
the
gets the death thing. So,
No,
get the,
Lando appreciated the fact that she was dead.
yeah, okay.
Tobias Beckett is
Tobias
the guy
Beckett.
who's credited with killing
Oh, okay,
Orsing.
okay.
Yeah.
So, do we get Tobias?
Oh, we're not going to have Woody on it. Well,
Well, Tobias
no,
is
he's dead. He's dead.
Right.
Oh, that's right. That's
Han
right.
shot him. Han shot
That's
him.
right. That's right.
Han shot first.
Well, everybody gets shot. Fennec Shand got shot, and she's alive. So
That's true.
Okay.
But anyways, but you're right. Now I have to But no, I think we might get some of the original crew. I mean, obviously we're not going to get Boss because I don't think he would
Yeah, Black
be the
President.
Trandoshan family of some sort, right? Or work with Santo, right? I don't think that would
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah.
So, but I think Dengar out of all of them would be the one that, and possibly IG-88, but I don't think we'll get that just because it's too close to IG-11, and we've already got enough similarities for Mando, I think. But I definitely think we might get the Simon Pegg Dengar.
That would be awesome. I think there's a pretty good chance that Santo is obviously going to join, but also Danny Trejo's character. He's going to be like, hey, you look like you could be pretty good in a fight, and Danny Trejo's going to be all like, I dabble.
Well, isn't Santo part of the crew though? I mean, he was at the family dinner as the bodyguard there, right? So I assumed he's already joined the crew.
Well, I wonder though if that was just a one-time thing, and he's going to like have to pay him for like everything's its own individual job.
See,
I
I
just assume he hired him because he needed a job. So I just assumed that's what it meant. You want to be part of my team.
Okay, all right, yeah,
I
you're probably right.
I took the dinner itself to be kind of a trial run for Santo. Like, hey, yeah, you did a good job here. Cool. We'll bring you in as part of the
Yeah.
family.
It might be like an official thing, but I thought that's what the connection was. But yeah, maybe.
That I think we'll figure out next episode if Black Chrysanthemum is still around. And I got to imagine he would be. They've done too much setup to just cut him now.
Yeah. So here's my dark horse prediction, other than Santo. Is obviously during the big final showdown with the Pikes, Boba Fett's going to ride that Rancor into battle, leading his old crew, right? And I think that some of the people that Fennec Shand will either hire or more than likely just try to hire Han Solo and Chewbacca. And that's when we'll get our Harrison Ford de-aged scene. But either he will begrudgingly accept at first, then when he finds out it's working for Boba Fett, he and Chewbacca bail out. Or you'll just have a scene where Fennec Shand calls him on the hologram thingy and tells him it's for Boba Fett, and he's all like, no. And that's we just see him as a hologram.
Okay, what I want now is a recreation of that scene from X-Men First Class where Magneto and Professor X walk up to Hugh Jackman's Wolverine. He's like, hey, yeah, we need to ask you a question. He's just like, go F yourself.
Yeah.
Well, if Fennec
Never mind.
Shand is doing the recruiting, why couldn't we see Omega?
We could. She could either show up or, and be a part of the crew. Or, once again, like I just said, we'll have a series of cameos where Fennec Shand calls famous people and they find out that they would work for Boba Fett and they're like, no thanks.
Nope. No. We could get somebody from the Bad Batch, even if it's not Omega.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Oh, hey!
I think Omega was my first choice just because she developed a relationship with Fennec Shand, right?
Uh-huh. Yep.
So that's where I was saying Omega. But yeah, I was thinking any of them. I mean, you could get Captain Rex, which would
yes.
be played by Tamara Morrison.
Oh, that'd be so great. That'd be so great. Or we could see calling them and they accept Grief Karga. We could see him come help fight. Yeah. Heck, guys, Cara Dune could show up. She and Fennec Shand kind of, buddy.
Could see Bo-Katan in them, right?
Oh, yeah, we could.
All right, my last pitch. Yeah. My last pitch for this. Still somebody from the Bad Batch. Get Hunter, but have him be played by D. Bradley Baker.
Or you could have one of those clones from the Bad Batch show up in live action, played by the other dude who plays clones. I don't remember that actor's name, but the slightly younger clones in the prequel trilogy are played by a different guy.
Oh.
Or maybe this is where we get Daniel to come in?
Well, Daniel could come in to play a different aged clone. But I was thinking of, is his name Bodhi? It's something like Bodhi, right?
I'm going to have to look this up.
But yeah, there's sort of, Daniel is kid clones. This dude is like young adult clones, and Tamora Morrison is like adult clones in the
old man
trilogy.
Clones at this point.
Yeah, or old men clones. Yeah, but I meant during the prequels, you saw the three different phases. Yeah. And I can't remember this guy's name, and I don't think he's not been as closely associated with the clones as Morrison.
But that would be cool though if we got some live action like cartoon characters, right, from the Bad Batch or something,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah. It
or
wouldn't
like
be
I
the
said,
first time.
some of the OG Empire Strikes Back bounty hunters. So
Yeah, yeah. That's the ground is fertile with lots of options for allies for Boba Fett. My brain is still trying to figure out though how what point of the timeline the story where he's getting ready to face off against the Pikes is happening. Is this before or after we see him help Mando?
well, that's where I mean it's supposed to be after, right? Because that's the way after he helps Mando and he leaves, right? But then we see Fennec Shand still on the spaceship after Luke, right? But we don't because Boba takes off, right? But then the
Mhm.
way that ends is then Boba and Fennec shoot Bib Fortuna, right? So you're assuming the way they did that post credit scene was after Mando season 2 ends. Because that's when Boba Fett shoots Bib Fortuna is at the end of Mando season 2. But
Right.
again, to your point, but was that just a teaser thrown at the end? But really, has it actually happened before that?
Well, it couldn't have because Boba has his armor back, and he doesn't get his armor
True,
back until
that's
he
right.
helps Mando.
Yeah,
But at the same time, um, I don't know. It's very confusing. Yeah.
It's got to have happened.
after.
The current part has to have happened after season 2 of The Mandalorian,
Yeah,
but it's
Okay.
not clear how much after. Did he just immediately go, "Oh, yep, got my armor back. I'm ready to take down Bib," or were there more steps along the way?
which
And
go ahead. Sorry, Nathan. I
I,
thought you were done.
I'm thinking that it's the former, that he basically immediately went and took down Bib because he talked about being done with the Bacta tank in this episode, which
Mhm.
tells me that we're probably not getting more flashbacks
Right.
because
Right.
that was their storytelling
Flashback
device for that.
vehicle. Yeah.
Well, this ended everything, right? He got all his vengeance or revenge back in this episode. So
Well, I feel like if there were more steps between season 2 of Mandalorian and him going after Bib, those would also be done with flashbacks. And if that was the case, then they would just have him not be done with the Bacta tank.
yeah,
Right. Right.
but I agree with you. Yeah, I mean that's kind of what's been linking the flashbacks. So, but I also think that I assumed we were going to find out in a flashback though of why he because this is what doesn't make sense to me. I mean, I get it. He had to get it. I guess if he had to get his armor in Fennec Shand, but like when they went to go steal Slave One or Fire Spray, whatever the heck you want to call it, why did he just kill Bib Fortuna at that point?
Yeah.
Too many
Maybe
guards.
Bib. Maybe either too many guards, or maybe Bib wasn't present at that time.
But I mean, but again, it's just Boba and Fennec that go and kill Bib. So how did that matter that time? Than when he went again, too many guards. But what do you mean too many guards? Like it's not like after Slave One gets stolen, Bib Fortuna probably would have more guards at that point because he
True.
knows Boba's alive.
Well, the biggest difference between stealing Slave One and then going to kill Boba is
Bib.
Boba. I'm sorry, going to kill Bib. Boba has his armor back when he goes to kill Bib. Maybe he fears the guards less once he puts back on his Beskar and he has all his gear.
Plus, he got his fire spray back in order to exact revenge on the Kintan Striders. He can't necessarily do that if he's busy running his criminal empire.
Yeah.
So maybe he wanted to just get the ship back so that he could exact his revenge, get his armor, and then be ready to take over.
And I'm good with that. And this is why I don't know if we're done with the flashbacks because I think the reason he wanted to go kill Bib Fortuna after all this is because he finds out Bib was the one who worked with the Pikes to kill the Tuskens.
Ooh,
Oh,
yeah, that'd be good.
Yeah.
Hey, maybe he doesn't find that out in a flashback. Maybe he finds that out.
Well, he has to do it in a flashback because
Well,
the
yeah, that's right.
flashback
Because
killed
yeah,
Bib.
yeah,
So,
you're right.
so that's what I'm saying. So that's where I feel like there's got to be something to link that. And again, we don't necessarily need the Bacta tank to do this at this point. I mean, he could just tell
True.
Fennec or something in a story, right? To your point, like we could have had this whole time. But I think that's why he wants to kill Bib Fortuna is because Bib was working with the Pikes. Because to your point, we got that conversation. Fennec doesn't think the Tuskens would have died to a speeder bike gang.
Yeah,
And we know the speeder bike gang somehow has to be still linked to the Pikes, and that's where I think, like I said, Bib is linked to the Pikes.
he's the go-between. Yeah. Okay, makes total sense. Yeah. And if any of those things happen in an upcoming chapter of the Book of Boba Fett, you can guarantee that we are going to talk about it here on What a Piece of Junk, because we know that you guys tune into us for this sort of scintillating analysis. And speaking of scintillating analysis, you can get a lot more of it for your favorite fandoms all across the Fandom Podcast Network. So we're going to take a short break and let Kevin tell us about those other shows, then come back and talk about some interesting Star Wars news that happened since our last episode.
Thank you for listening. We hope you're enjoying this podcast. We'd like to continue to feed your ears by inviting you to listen to these other great shows on the Fandom Podcast Network. It starts with our flagship show, Culture Clash, discussing the latest in entertainment pop culture. Bloody Kings, Immortals Take Notice, our show covering the entire Highlander universe. Couch Potato Theaters, where we celebrate our favorite movies. Time Warp, the Fandom Flashback podcast discussing a year in movies and our favorite retro movie and TV pop culture topics. Good Evening, discussing all things Alfred Hitchcock. Union Federation, our Star Trek and Orville show. Hair Metal, the 80s and early 90s rock metal podcast. Type 40, our show covering the time-traveling Doctor Who universe with host Dan Hadley. Lethal Mullet, an 80s and 90s action film podcast with host Adam P. O'Brien. Also check out the Lethal Mullet Network for more great podcasts. What a Piece of Junk, a Star Wars podcast with hosts Scott, Derek, and Nathan. Making Treks, a Star Trek podcast, a deep dive into the final frontier with host Mark Newbold and Adam P. O'Brien. And check out our newest shows, The Fandom Show, our monthly Fandom Podcast Network live YouTube exclusive show about the month's hottest topics in fandom, and the FPN True Believers MCU podcast, discussing the Marvel Cinematic Universe and the related Marvel television and streaming MCU universe, including the connections to the original Marvel comics. You can find the Fandom Podcast Network on several platforms. Please subscribe to the Fandom Podcast Network YouTube channel to receive notifications of new podcast episodes and live events. You can enjoy all of the Fandom Podcast Network audio podcasts on our master feed at fpnet.podbean.com. The Fandom Podcast Network is on all major podcast platforms, including Apple Podcast and iTunes. You can find the Fandom Podcast Network on Facebook. You can email us at fandompodcastnetwork@gmail.com. You can also find the Fandom Podcast Network on Instagram at Fandom Podcast Network and on Twitter at FanPod Network. Thank you for listening, and remember, respect others and enjoy your fandom.
All right, great. Thank you so much, Kevin. Well, guys, I'm going to mosey on over to the bar here at the Sanctuary, see if I can get Jennifer Beal to give me a drink, and then hopefully give me some Star Wars news and or rumors to discuss. Okay, well, this week, because we had a pretty gruesome episode with people's arms getting torn out and whatnot, I am actually drinking an adult beverage for tonight's podcast. It is a rum and Coke. But I told Mita that this is officially a sign that we need to get back to the Outer Banks, to go back to the beach this year, because it is the last serving of my Kill Devil rum, which is a North Carolina bespoke rum. And it's really good, and I'm sad that I just drank the last of it, but so be it. Well, here is what I found out news-wise. Speaking of beautiful women, Mary Elizabeth Winstead has been announced as joining the Star Wars spin-off series Ahsoka. Those of you who are newer to fandom probably recognize her as the Huntress from Birds of Prey, but she has been involved in television and movies for quite a while, and is probably known amongst a slightly older fan demographic for her role in Scott Pilgrim versus the World. Derek, is that where you know her from?
Well, not just that, but we also know that currently she is married to Ewan McGregor, Obi-Wan himself.
That's true. Yes, Obi-Wan Kenobi's girlfriend / wife, what have you, is now part of the Star Wars universe. So that's pretty cool.
I'm a little disappointed she ended up not playing Satele Duchess, though.
Yeah, that would have been good. It would have been cool to see her sort of be the one who is romanced by Obi-Wan. But in this case, we'll have to make do with whomever she's going to play on Ahsoka. Derek, do you have any theories about that? You can pontificate while I try to get our resident Wookiee back in the cockpit.
Mara Jade.
I said pontificate, not send me into a tizzy of fanboy speculation.
Well, that's the only thing I can think of, unless she's going to play some Imperial. She could play an Imperial really well.
All right, I think I have the Wookiee by the tail here.
There we go.
Nathan, are you back?
I am back. Sorry about that. I accidentally hit the door button and closed the door on the ship.
At least it wasn't the airlock, so we got you back in.
Yeah. So, Nathan, while you were gone, we were theorizing as to who Mary Elizabeth Winstead could play on Ahsoka. Derek decided to just push all my buttons at once and suggest Mara Jade. But
then I came back and said she'd play an Imperial.
Yeah,
I think she could play an Imperial officer. One of those ones that we haven't. What's the one in the Aftermath series?
Yeah, the name's on the tip of
it's
my
Ray,
tongue.
isn't it? It's Ray, but it's spelled the other way. It's Ray, I think, instead of Rey.
Yeah, Admiral Sloan. Ray Sloan.
Ray
Admiral
Sloan.
Right?
Yeah. So I think she could play that.
You could be right. I would not be surprised if that's who she's going to be. As we continue to, I guess, sort of, I don't want to say retcon Aftermath, but modify it.
Well, right? and we're linking it to that, right? We're trying to. I mean, this is obviously Ahsoka series is in between Mando season 2 and the sequel trilogy, right? So how do we continue to bridge that in some aspects? I mean, we got Cobb Vanth. We've been getting some little tidbits. So I feel like we need a major character to link us somewhere, right? We need to start seeing some first order stuff. I mean, do we get Hux's father, the actual whatever? I mean, he was a General Hux too, wasn't he?
He was, yeah.
Yeah. So somewhere along the line, we're going to have to get some of these characters. I mean, so where are we going to get them?
He was Brindle Hux, right?
Brindle Hux. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Nathan, who do you think Mary Elizabeth Winstead might play?
Well, I think the safe money is on a new character, because that way I can just say a new character and she can be almost anybody and it works.
And then you can be all like,
with dyed hair.
Called it. But I think another option would be Hera, because we know that Ahsoka and Sabine went off to try to find Ezra. It makes sense that Hera would go along with them, or at least check in with them at times on that adventure. So I think that's a possibility.
So if we're going to see that, if Hera's going to be there, which I like your idea. I'm not convinced that that's what's going to happen, but I think that'd be cool.
Yeah, I'm not totally convinced either. I just think it's a cool idea.
But do you think that means we might also see her and Kanan's son?
Yes.
Well, you'd have to, yeah.
I think so.
And I assume that Luke takes him to train.
Probably.
Now, I know
yeah.
Obi-Wan himself has 5 kids now.
No, that's Ewan McGregor has 5 kids.
Ewan McGregor has 5 kids now. I don't know if any of them are the right age to play.
Well, let's see, because when
Jason Syndulla,
because Jason Syndulla was what, about 5 or 6 that we said.
Mm-hmm.
Well, actually,
so now
he'd be like 8 or 9, right? Because that would have been before A New Hope, and A New Hope to Return of the Jedi 7 years. So he'd have to be at 7 at the youngest to be about 8 or 9, depending on when Kanan dies. He dies probably a year or 2 before A New Hope, right? We'd imagine.
And so I think that because of the time difference between the end of Return of the Jedi, which I'm assuming that the celebratory scenes on Lothal in Rebels happen right near the end of Return of the Jedi. Depending on how much time you want to say has passed between that and whenever the Ahsoka series starts, Jason could be like 12.
It'd be 5 years, because we know Mando is 5 years after Return of the Jedi. We know that.
Yeah, but
confirmed.
do we know that Ahsoka is going to start at that same moment in time?
Not
necessarily, but I think the fact that we know she's looking for Grand Admiral Thrawn, there might be some some stuff we get again flashbacks. We could get this crap like we get in Boba Fett, but
It's
but
called
in-
non-linear storytelling. It's
but
not
in
crap.
but
I just don't want them to overdo that.
Mhm.
It's okay
or do
occasionally.
it all in 1 or 2 episodes and then get to the current timeline, which the current timeline is going to be after season 2 of Mando.
Yeah.
That's the current timeline right now, which is what
Yeah.
we're at with Boba.
So we think Jason would be 6 years older than the last time we saw him in cartoon form.
5 to 6, yeah, I would agree. Yeah,
So he could be like 12 or 13.
yeah, he'd be a teenager. Yeah, he'd be a teenager.
Yeah. All right,
And-
cool.
and-
I'm down for that. Yeah.
Which
All right,
then
the
we
next-
could get him to train from Ezra too, depending on.
Yes. Yes.
Oh,
And if he does go off with Master Luke and Grogu to be part of the new Jedi school, it once again it continues to add gravitas to Ben Solo's betrayal and transformation to Kylo Ren.
Correct.
Yeah.
and we'd come full circle with the EU with getting Jason back to Luke's academy.
Look at you. Yeah.
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 speaking
But
of,
it makes more sense of
Jason
why Luke becomes grumpy old man too.
Mhm.
Because all these great people and characters potentially are what Ben Solo slaughters, right?
Yeah.
Flip side, Derek was right in his earlier prediction. Mary Elizabeth Winstead does play Mara Jade. She joins the Jedi school. Kylo Ren kills her. That really pisses Luke off.
And piss off you too.
It would.
It was-
Like, hey, Adam Driver, we need to talk. All right. Anyway, so
we do all hate Darth Vader for killing all the younglings, but one thing that made that scene lack a little bit of punch is we didn't know any of those younglings.
yeah, we don't know any of the names of those kids that got killed at the Jedi Academy.
Yep.
Yeah,
And
I think it would really add some weight if we suddenly
we know Grogu gets slaughtered. There'd be an
Oh
uproar.
my gosh,
You talk about all the rioting we had a couple years ago in Minneapolis and California. It'll be worse than that. It'll be pandemic global all around. It'll be millions of
my
people on
gosh.
the streets going
be
to
total-
Disney World and Disneyland and ready to shut them down.
tearing
Total
down the Yoda statue in front of
Skywalker Ranch.
yeah.
Yep.
Oh,
Okay, well, speaking of interconnected Star Wars stories and Dave Filoni characters like Rebels, we did get a leak about the Bad Batch Season 2 release date. So it appears here, guys, that there has been a leak over
Photo.
on a photograph that shows August. It was. We know that the show has been announced as having been renewed for a season 2. We knew that last year, and so there's a picture from a magazine.
Star Wars
that says-
Insider.
Yep, from Star Wars Insider that says the release date is spring of this year. So I guess release date is more like release season. But yes, I guess that means sometime in next season we're going to see season 2 of the Bad Batch. What do you think, Nathan?
I think that seems fairly likely. We're looking at getting Kenobi this year as well,
And Andor.
and Andor. That could, if we throw in Bad Batch, that could get us all the way to the end of the year, with most weeks having some form of Star Wars.
and potentially Mando season 3 in the winter too.
Yeah, I think that that could finish out the year, starting up Mando season 3 and go into 2022. I think that's kind of their goal, is keep Star Wars. There's so much that you could do with Star Wars, so many time periods you can cover. They can keep Star Wars showing up on Disney Plus week after week after week. Gives us plenty to talk about, so I'm not going to complain about that. And if there's a certain time period that you prefer, you can watch that and kind of skip some of the others and still get your fill of Star Wars content.
Well, and we know Bad Batch premiered on May 4th, right?
Yep.
Which is spring. So
It is spring, yes.
we might get that again for season 2.
We might.
Yep.
That would be pretty awesome, I think.
Ooh, what day of the week is May 4th
That's
this
what
year,
I'm
you guys?
scrolling to.
Everyone's
It is
furiously checking their calendar.
Wednesday.
Okay.
Oh,
Wednesday.
better.
Odds are high.
Last year they had to switch up the schedule a little bit
It's
to
on
accommodate
Fridays.
for it. So yeah.
That could totally happen, and I'm here for it because I really enjoyed the Bad Batch. I think I like those characters. They're the classic, archetypes. and I think that it's fun, and I want to see what happens next. Especially if we're thinking there's going to be an Ahsoka, I mean, an Omega connection on Book of Boba Fett. That'd be awesome.
That'd be cool.
Yeah. All right. Well, the last piece of news I have is a little bit older, but it's important to us here on the podcast. Friend of the show, Delilah S. Dawson, Star Wars author, has announced on Twitter, or I guess maybe teased on Twitter, that she is going to write a sequel to her biggest Star Wars book to date, Star Wars Phasma. So, as you all know, Dawson wrote the story about Phasma's origin before she joined the First Order, before she really became the silvery clad First Order Stormtrooper commander. It is a brutal tale of her growing up on essentially a post apocalyptic world. If you haven't read it, I would suggest checking it out. It was a fun book. Derek is not a huge fan. And we talked about this on, a long time ago on the podcast.
2 years ago.
Yes. And essentially,
Many moons.
Derek's complaints are all very well warranted. It feels like it was a different story that we just had Delilah come along later and add Star Wars elements into an existing narrative, because it's a very Mad Max Fury Road kind of existence that Phasma is going through.
Avatar, all the different
Yes.
things. Which
Oh,
again,
and
I like Delilah S. Dawson. I like her writing. I mean, the other stuff that she's doing, and the current timeline stuff was good. Like when she was doing with Cardinal and all that stuff, which was felt to me more original. But the backstory I just didn't care for as much, because I felt it was just previous. We're already aware of it. So, but
Yes,
I would love to see what she's based off the premise of what she's talking about here with the second novel. Basically, what happens after her and Finn battle off in the Last Jedi.
Yeah. And so, in the tweet that we are referencing here, Delilah writes, "I have a pitch ready to go if the powers that be want the rest of Phasma's story after she fell through that fiery hole while fighting Finn. We know what her armor is made of, and we know she's ruthless. I want to write what she does next." So now, she then replies to another question with this sentence: "I pitch it as Mad Max Fury Road meets Star Wars Legends." And so I got a lot of Mad Max Fury Road feeling from the first Phasma book. So it doesn't surprise me at all as she wants to do, continue.
Well, not so much
atmosphere.
Fury Road. I would say the other Mad Max is like Thunderdome and
Okay, yeah, OG
yeah.
Mad Max. Yeah,
Yeah,
all right, sure. Okay. I concede that point. It definitely felt like it was a post-apocalyptic story that Delilah had written, saved it, and then pulled it up out of mothballs and put Star Wars vignettes and atmosphere into it. Especially the parts where they're fighting over the big pit of toxic waste with the razory sharp rusted metal and all this stuff. I mean, it's just not. It didn't feel very Star Warsy, but it was a fun book. I couldn't put it down. I finished it in like one weekend. So
yeah,
personally,
I'd be super excited for a Fury Road version. That'd be pretty cool.
I haven't eaten any good books lately, so I will leave it up to you guys to decide what is good or not good as far as books are concerned. But that said, I am not surprised at all if Phasma comes back from after falling into that fiery hole. I didn't think that she had died when watching The Last Jedi. It felt very much like Boba Fett. We have a cool character, cool armor, very few lines, and we primarily like this character because of how she looks. Dies in a way that is kind of off screen and gives us a way to get her back.
Yeah, and we've just seen Boba Fett survived, so.
Well, that's my question. So we know that it's Beskar?
We don't know that it's Beskar.
No.
You see, this is you hating the book. Remember, in the book, we find out that it is made from the hull of Queen Amidala's starship from the
That's
Phantom
correct.
Menace.
Yes, that's correct. Yes. I
Which-
remember now.
Remember,
If it's
Phasma breaks into the Stormtrooper armor factory, and takes the leftover wreckage and melts it down, forms it into her armor plating.
Yeah.
Which,
So,
if
okay.
it's made out of starship hull, I think it can survive a little bit of fire.
Yeah.
Plus, since she had the crack in it, she'd have a really cool scar over one eye.
Just like
Yeah.
Kylo Ren.
Mm-hmm. Or the eye gets messed up because she did fall into the vacuum of space for a few minutes, but the rest of her's okay because the armor protected her, and she comes back with an epic eye patch.
Arg.
Yar,
Yeah, like-
IBs of
like,
Captain Pirate Phasma.
Like the Mace Windu variant in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
It's the Mace Windu variant, yes.
So I'm trying to think of playoff of Nick Fury.
Mhm.
I'll have to come back to it. So, but anyways, yes. But like I said, I mean,
Nick Fury,
I
right?
like the character. That's why I dislike The Last Jedi so much. What was you say, Nathan? I didn't catch it.
Nick Fury Road.
Nick Fury. Okay, there you go.
I'm dead. Somebody else has to run the podcast. I died. That was amazing.
Well,
Nick
don't
Fury
trust me
Road.
with buttons. I already locked myself out once.
Yeah, Derek, you're gonna have to save it, everybody.
Yes.
All right. Anyway,
What it had to be like Mace Windu Fury Road or something like that.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
but no, I like I said, I like the character of Phasma. That's why I was so upset with The Last Jedi because, again, she gets beat up by janitor.
He's
Finn,
not a janitor.
and
Hey, nobody has more motivation to beat someone up than a disgruntled former employee beating the crap out of their horrible boss. Come on, man.
So,
That's
but-
obvious.
But even then, it's like she's supposed to be this master fighter and stuff, and Finn is not a master fighter. I mean, he might have the Force. We
Mhm.
never got this answered yet because I mean, this is
Yeah.
what he might have the Force, but at the same time, it's like, but he doesn't have he had some magical moment or something where he got Mjolnir or something, like Captain America does, and he does something with it, right? I mean, it's not that. So it's like, why would she? I don't know. Because, well, I guess BB-8's the one who saves him anyways from the sea.
He does actually, yeah, because
So,
Finn's
I get
about to get killed, and
because
BB-8's
we know the
all like,
droids are always the
check
heroes
it
of
out.
every.
Yeah,
of
yeah.
every
What
series.
the aspect droid saved everybody? This has never happened before.
Yeah. So, anyways, I forgot. I do clarify that BB-8 truly defeated Captain Phasma. So
So
but
if
anyways,
there-
she should still live.
If there is a Captain Phasma sequel, a second book, you can be sure that Derek and I will both read it and tell you. Yeah, it'll be funny if we flip flop and I'm like, this book was horrible. The first one was so much better, and Derek is all like, best Star Wars book ever. Anyway,
Very, very possible.
it's totally possible.
And maybe
But
we
you
can
know-
get Delilah to come on the podcast.
Oh, that would be a dream come true. I got to meet her at the at a bookstore here in Charlotte in the before times, long before coronavirus was ever a thing. Yeah, it was great.
So Black
she's really
Spire
wonderful.
Outpost.
That's right. I got her to sign that book too. I haven't finished that one. Spoiler alert: Cardinal appears in that book. He has thoroughly joined the good side, if you will. Okay, but you know who may or may not thoroughly join the good side is the winner between the two combatants in this episode's segment of Star Wars SmackDown. And we didn't have time to do a poll on Facebook this week, so I'm sorry, guys. But if you guys want to send us ideas for matchups for Star Wars SmackDown, please feel free to do that either in the Facebook group or just email me, etc. You can tweet at us on Twitter. Our Twitter handles are here on screen, and we'll go over them at the end of the show. But this week we're going to just sort of spitball it and do a off the cuff Star Wars SmackDown. So we're going to step into the squared circle right now. All right, this week's matchup is notorious Trandocin bounty hunter Bosk versus clone powerhouse Wrecker. This is a pretty good matchup, guys, because we're sort of crossing time frames here, sort of crossing periods. Not 100%, because Bosk was involved in some Clone Wars episodes, but most people think of Bosk as coming from Empire Strikes Back and the Galactic Civil War era. So, Nathan, you're our resident clone expert. Who you got in this fight between Bosk and Wrecker?
This is a tough one. So Bosk would normally have the strength advantage against almost anybody we could put up against him, except for maybe a Wookiee or another Trandoshan, but maybe not against Wrecker. Wrecker is huge. He went toe-to-toe with a baby Rancor, which not many people can do that. So when they get in close, that's going to be a really tough fight. Now, as far as ranged options, Bosk does have a mortar gun, which is awesome, but Wrecker is no slouch with ranged weaponry either. So I think this is a really even matchup. I think the thing that's probably going to win it for Bosk is Trandocins have a healing factor. So if the fight goes on for a long time, eventually Wrecker's going to get worn down. Bosk is not. Now, the thing that could swing it in Wrecker's direction is the armor. Clones had better armor than Stormtroopers do, but I don't think that's going to be enough. I got to go with Bosk. Sorry, D. Bradley Baker. You're doing a great job as Eagly over on Peacemaker, but I don't think you're winning this one.
All right. So we got one vote for the Lizard Man. Derek, who do you think's going to take home the victory here?
I would actually have to go. I agree with you. I think when it comes to range weapons, I think Bosk has a slight advantage when it comes to that. But honestly, Wrecker could just pick up a whole missile from a spaceship and just throw it at him, right? I mean, we've seen that, right? So he loves explosives.
Yeah, and we've seen Wrecker lift one of those clone transports, the flying transports, because we saw him have to pick that up to rescue somebody. So
yeah, and I agree with you when it comes to hand that the Trandosins do have the healing ability, but we've seen. I mean, that was the thing too, right? When we were talking about him fighting Mochi with Wrecker, even when he was tired, he was still throwing punches, haymakers, right, back and forth. So, I'd honestly, I think, if it got to be in a gladiator type scene, because we have to imagine it's in a gladiator Thunderdome, right? Because that's what Black Chrysanthemum and all that, and that's what we get with the kind of the underworld of Mos Espa and Tatooine. I'm going to actually have to go with Wrecker on this one. I think he's got enough strength that he would do enough damage and probably basically knock out Bosk with a headbutt.
That'd be a pretty epic fight. All right,
very appropriate move for Wrecker to do a headbutt.
Yeah. I'm going to have to break the tie here because we had one vote for Bosk and one for Wrecker. I got to go with Nathan. I think that Bosk is going to win, but not for the reason necessarily that Nathan talked about. I don't know that Bosk's regeneration would actually come into play. It could, though. But I think it's more that Wrecker's just not real good with tactics. And he's just not a brainy guy. And I think Bosk is way more cunning, and he'll be lying in wait, and he'll be, just ready to spring ambushes. And finally, we know that he carries around Dioxis grenades as one of his weapons of choice. Bosk does. And we've seen gas affect Wrecker more than once. Specifically, I can remember it affecting him in the episode of The Bad Batch where Fennec Shand guest stars to capture Omega. And Wrecker and Fennec Shand are facing off in the sewer, and Fennec blasts the pipe in the wall beside him to blast him with. I'm pretty sure that was something close to Dioxis in that tube, in that pipeline, and it knocked him right out. So I think he would leave himself too vulnerable to Bosk's weapons of choice, whether it be the mortar gun or the Dioxis grenade. And like I said, we know that he would be affected by it because we've seen it happen before. So yeah, Bosk is unfortunately going to outsmart him with his reptile brain cunning. Well, if you guys have a face-off that you want to see us debate, just like I said, post it over on the Facebook group or email us, and we will be happy to discuss it. And there's one last thing that we're happy to discuss this episode, and it's Derek's favorite part of the show, and I made him wait till the end because that's how I am. It is, what Star Wars t-shirts are we wearing this week? So, Derek, you had to go a whole week without telling anybody about your Star Wars shirts. I'm just kidding. I know that you told everybody who would listen. What Star Wars t-shirt do you have on this week?
My wife's always annoyed with me. So, obviously with the news of Mary Elizabeth Winstead, I had to wear my Ahsoka shirt.
Ah, yes, chibi Ahsoka. Beautiful with her white lightsabers.
Yes, so very, very thematic with the news that we got there. So hopefully she'll be not a side character like we've gotten with some of the cameos here in the Book of Boba. I'd like her to actually be a main character of some sort.
Yeah, that would be good. All right, Nathan, what Star Wars t-shirt do you have on this week?
All right, well, I am wearing a new Star Wars t-shirt, at least new to me. I got this at Target this week. It says Star Wars in a galaxy far, far away on it. But the Star Wars is in kind of the original font with the yellow, except instead of being filled in yellow, it has characters from A New Hope in each of the letters. So the S is R2D2, the T is C3PO, the A is Luke Skywalker, the R is Darth Vader, the W is Han, the next A is Chewie, and then we have Leia and Obi-Wan in the R and S on Wars.
That is really cool, and it's a very obviously a very 80s inspired shirt because again, original font for Star Wars, and B, the rainbowy effect on their faces reminds me of we used to call that chromium or old school hologram production there. I think I might be the only person old enough to remember that kind of sticker. I don't. Do you guys know what I'm talking about?
I do remember them from the Star Trek movies. Actually, they used a lot of this sort of coloring on their advertising.
Yeah. And so what I'm talking about, though, it used to be these metallic decals that when you turned them, instead of lenticular art, the light would play across them and produce almost a rainbowy sheen. It was a very 1980s hologram. Yeah, but it wasn't a prism per se because it was metal, not crystal. And it was a very hologrammy thing
I remember
from the
those.
80s.
Weren't they like triangles, and they were like in a glass or like a plastic glass case?
No, these were actual decals. You could peel them off the backing and stick them to your Trapper Keeper. I'm gonna have to find it and put it in the Facebook group for you guys. Otherwise, all the people. Terry's probably out there yelling at her podcast. I know what he's talking about.
I'm sure Kevin understands it too.
Oh yes, Kevin is going to be all like, I still have all of these in a sticker album
on my Trapper Keeper.
Yes,
that he has next to his DVDs and Blu-rays.
Yes. Absolutely.
Laser discs.
All right. Well, I am wearing a repeat shirt, but only one repeat. This is the second time I've worn it. It's a First Order Stormtrooper in a variety of patterns. He's like splayed all over my shirt multiple times, repeated, and then also multiple times repeated in cartoon font in big orange letters on a white shirt is pew pew. Pew, 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 pew. So it's my Stormtrooper Pew Pew shirt. The only thing separating one Stormtrooper from another is there is a commander over here with the red shoulder pad to denote.
He's on your arm too.
Squad leader. Yeah, there he is. There he is.
Yeah.
Mirrors. Woo. Anyway, but yes, pew pew pew. So I thought it would be great to have the pew pew after an episode where we got to see Slave One fire its cannons not once but twice.
Well, and a Captain Phasma.
Oh yes, and we talked about Captain Phasma. Yeah. I gotta say, I'm speaking of Slave One firing its cannons. I loved the fact that the desert sand protected the Sarlacc from the blasters, but then also I loved that Boba Fett couldn't use them to blow open the doorway to the garage at Bib Fortuna's palace, and so we had the classic moment of Fennec Shand being all, simple tools are the best. I'm going to blast the pulley, blam. So good. So
and we continue the Star Wars trope of shoot the door control, and that will open or close the door, whichever you want it to do.
Yeah, whichever one you want to happen. If you blast the door, kid, it will work. Yeah.
Yes, there you go.
All right, well, if you want to get your own cool What a Piece of Junk t-shirt or mouse pad or coffee mug or some other awesome piece of merchandise, just head over to the TeePublic store, teepublic.com, search up Fandom Podcast Network, and you can find stuff from all of our great shows. And speaking of finding shows, Derek, why don't you let the folks know where they can find the show on the internet?
So, yes, you want to look for the Fandom Podcast Network, and you can find that on the fpnet.podbean.com, which is the master feed. You can obviously download the Podbean app. You can also find us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and Google Play. Facebook, I run it over there on the What a Piece of Junk of Star Wars podcast Facebook group. You can email us at whatapieceofjunkpod@gmail.com. And Scott runs the Twitter, which is at What Wars. And then if you do Instagram, Kyle runs that as the General Fandom Podcast Network. And Nathan, why don't you tell the listeners about the Apple Podcast reviews?
We would love for you to go out and review us on Apple Podcasts because we need to get more people to know about this show. And we need to get some muscle in here. And if we can get some 5-star reviews, we can do that by getting more listeners. The more listeners we have, the more credits we get to hire more muscle. Wait, I'm not actually getting credits for this.
Is that how this is supposed to work? I don't think.
We're a little bit behind on credits, so so we don't want to kill any Trandocins to piss off the owners of the casino. So
we just want to threaten them enough to where the owners will forgive
Give
our
us
debts.
tribute.
But yeah, if you give us some 5-star Apple Podcast reviews, maybe we can hire some muscles.
Totally. All right. Well, if you guys have anything else to hit us up with in between shows, you can reach out to us personally on social media. Nathan, where can folks find you on social media?
You can find me on Facebook under my real name, Nathan Miracle. There's not too many miracles out there, so easy to find. You can also find me on Twitter or Instagram at Gooey Chewy. That's GOOEYCHEWIE. Scott, where can people find you?
I'm also on Facebook under my real name, Scott Botman, or you can reach out to me on Twitter with @WhatWars for the Twitter for the show. My personal Twitter is @ScotticusMax, and I do write my own science fiction novels, so you can check out my author website at writegreatscott.com. Derek, where can the listeners find you?
Well, I don't have my own writer's blog post, so you'll have to just find me on Facebook under my real name, Derek Marsh, or the randomling that I do over in Twitter at HoodieDM83.
Good times. Well, we want to thank you all for joining us for this episode. Please let us know anything we can do to make the show more enjoyable for you. And always remember to respect each other and always respect each other's fandom. All right, Nathan, punch it.